Yeah, I mean, to me, let me switch a little bit. Do you believe that belief is a choice?
Belief, yes. Belief is a choice within the deterministic framework, yes.
Now, if you believe that belief is a choice, can you just choose right now to believe the Statue of Liberty is in Iran?
Oh, in that sense. No, I would agree with you that determinism is true. You can't desire that which you desire. Or you can't control that which you desire.
A better way I say it is belief is not a choice. Belief is what I am convinced of.
Mm-hmm.
And I need something to go off to convince me. If I have nothing to go off of, I I don't see how I can be convinced of something if I have absolutely no evidence to go off of. I don't actually have a choice in this.
Yeah, I agree. You don't have a choice in your beliefs or desires because those are things that happen beyond your control. So no, you can't choose what you believe in the in like an overall sense. You can't choose what you believe. The thing that we call choice is the decisions that you make, and it's a descriptive process. It doesn't mean that you have free will. We're describing a process that we see as choice between two things that you can decide to do.
Yeah,
So
I use
I
my
agree with you there.
reasoning. Yeah, I use my reasoning to derive at my choice, to derive at my decision over something. Like if I go to the supermarket and I'm grabbing some peanut butter, I like Kraft peanut butter. I've tried some of the other ones; they didn't taste as good, so that's why I'm choosing this one. But I can't do that with my beliefs.
That is true. But you can use reason, which was not, which you did not choose, to find beliefs that are best.
Well, I can use reason to derive beliefs from, but if something doesn't apply to the laws of logic or anything, and there's no possible way for me to ever falsify this or even find out like if it's true, then I I I just can't believe it because there's no justification behind it for me there.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, I'm not trying to convince you God does exist, and I don't believe that I could logically support that he does either. But yeah, that's probably a discussion for another time. So back to infinity. um, do you see that the law of causality and infinity are contradictory?
No.
Okay, so you don't believe that there was a beginning to the cycle of infinity?
Well, I mean, I lean more towards that there was some initial cause. I'm not saying that I believe in an infinite past. I, I believe that there was a finite thing that did start out. I just don't know what that is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't trying to say that it must be God, but I think okay. So the way we got here was we were talking about God, and then I think I was trying to build a build a case for why I think God exists, and then we disagreed on infinity. And my position was that the law of causality means that actual infinity doesn't exist. And then your position was that we probably have a disagreement there. And then from that point on, we kind of devolved into arguing over whether infinity existed or not. But
Yeah,
your
yeah,
your
but
your current position is that the law of causality holds true, and there must have been an initial beginning, right?
yeah, yeah. That
Okay,
that
cool,
is
cool,
what
cool.
I believe. Yeah.
Okay,
Just
cool.
when it comes to the infinity thing, like I've looked at the argument of the infinite regress being impossible, and I think the problem that's happening there is somebody's using a complete infinite set to when it's actually an incomplete infinite set. And that's just the problem I was trying to point out.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So, building from that point, meaning that there must have been a beginning, I see that there must have been a being that, and this is where you will not be convinced. I believe that there's a necessary being that created existence, and within existence, the laws of logic are the laws of existence. And I believe that this being had to have created the laws of logic, because the laws of logic are existence, right? So my belief is that the laws of logic are not non-existent. They are existent. And because they exist, they are contingent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I see it a different way, but I understand exactly what you're saying. I've
Okay, cool.
Quite a bit of stuff about this.
Okay, yeah. Me too, especially when I was doing research for this project. But the way I see it is all things that exist are contingent, and the thing that must have created existence is necessary, right? They're axiomatic, and that's the way I understand that it must be illogical, because it superseded logic, right? So it must be illogical because it doesn't conform within those rules, and also non-existence doesn't conform within the rules of logic. But yeah, so that is my case for why whatever we call this being, there's a necessary being. I believe that is logically proven, that there must be a necessary being, and we don't know what that necessary being is. We don't know if it's God. We don't know if it's an alien from a multiverse. We just know that there must have been one, because it's necessary for existence to exist.
Yeah, but again, this is the thing that drives me nuts with that is, I feel like that's a special pleading fallacy.
Okay, explain to me how.
Well, what caused God?
Right, that's the thing. It's illogical. It's outside of logic.
If you want to say it's outside of logic, then there's no way for me to have a reason to accept this and believe it.
Do you understand what I'm saying when I say logic is part of existence, but logic doesn't exist outside of existence?
I agree, but I mean,
so I would say
in order
existence
for God
is closed.
to affect this existence, he's gonna have to do
Exist.
something. Yeah, like I don't see how it's possible to do that. Maybe if I give an example, would you say that God created time?
Yeah.
Okay. So was there a time before time was created that God had not created time?
Yeah, I would say God exists outside of time.
So if there was no time, and time is the potential for anything to change, right? Like, if you got no time, you're stuck in a state of stasis. Everything just does not change. There is no change happening whatsoever.
Yeah, and if you think about it, if there's no time, you can't even exist, because there's no time to exist in.
Yeah, well, say that even just time did exist and then it stopped. You'd be just stuck in a state of stasis, right? You wouldn't move.
Yeah.
And to me, this seems counterintuitive, because how did God go from a God that had not created time to a God creating time to a God that had already created time without time being there?
Exactly. But so this issue goes deeper than God, because this issue is going to the question of what exists outside of existence. Like we agree that according to and this is where it gets weird. According to the laws of logic, their existence exists, and so there's existence and there's non-existence, right? Do we agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Non-existence is inherently illogical. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, we exist. We only really talk about things that exist. We don't
because
really.
like
We
the
can't
laws
really
of
talk about something that doesn't exist, right? There's nothing. There's no defining qualities of it.
exactly. And the word when we say the word non-existence, we aren't actually saying non-existence. We are referring to a thing that is beyond explanation. Because non-existence is neither death nor life. It's non-existence is neither existence or non-existence. It's
nothing.
it's right. It's nothing, and it's also not nothing.
Wait. If you say it's not nothing, that sounds like there's something.
Well, that's what I mean. Non-existence violates the law of identity.
Yeah, I
And
mean, identity needs some kind of quality like that.
Exactly, and it violates the law of non-contradiction and the law of the excluded middle. It violates all those laws. So non-existence is inherently illogical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is, but like, so at the same time, we have a question of a necessary being is also illogical because a necessary being goes against the law of causality, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. I see it as a special pleading fallacy.
Yeah, that's my point though. And fallacies occur when you break a law of logic, right?
Yeah.
And that's my whole point. That's the whole point. A necessary being doesn't conform to logic. So you're right.
But then I can't know anything about it, and every single argument that's made to try to show this to be the case just can't be used because you can't use logic to apply to this being.
Right, but I agree with you, but so we know that this being had to have existed.
Well, how can I say that it had to exist if it's not a logic, or if it doesn't need to apply to the laws of logic? I mean, if it doesn't apply to the laws of logic, saying it exists doesn't even make logical sense because I can just say it doesn't exist at the same time because it's logical.
Maybe, okay, so according to the law of causality, we've had a beginning. Existence had a beginning, right?
Yeah.
So how? How did it have a beginning?
I don't know.
Yes, exactly. And so when I say necessary being, I am referring to not necessarily a person, or when I say being, I mean like it can be anything, right? It can be anything. So a necessary being is something that is self-justificatory, and it's illogical because I don't know if I would say it's illogical because it's self-justificatory, but it's illogical because it's outside of the closed system. But hold on, I think I'm lost. we know that we had a beginning, but we also know that whatever created the beginning doesn't conform to logic, right?
Well, I mean, are you using logic to get there?
Yeah, so I'm using logic to get to the start of the universe.
Yeah.
And so right before the start of the universe, something had to occur to initiate the universe, right? Something had to cause the universe.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. So what I mean is that there is something that caused the universe. And that thing that caused the universe is what I would call a necessary being.
Yeah, I mean, the most used thing is the Big Bang Theory, which is there was a singularity of energy that was there, and then it expanded. And from that, our universe came. Everything that we know.
Yeah, but it's funny because that explanation kicks the can down to the road to the question.
Well, yeah,
which is how did the energy exist, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. But I just admit, I don't know.
Agreed. And I will say that logically, I don't know either. The only thing we can know is that it was a necessary being. We can't know anything besides
Well,
it is
how
a
can
necessary
you know that if you say that we can't know anything?
because something had to have caused it. And so a necessary being is the thing that we call the causer. Yeah, it's a tough conversation. I'll say that. It's definitely a tough conversation because it simultaneously goes in and out of the laws of the logic, and it's hard to keep track of like where we are at certain points.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the Kalam is one of the main reasons I remain agnostic, because I don't know.
Yeah.
It is very possible that it was God that did this. It's possible that it wasn't God that did this. I just don't know. I need something to go off of.
Yeah, that's fair. I would just say that the thing we refer to when we talk about God is not necessarily a man, an old man with a white beard. I would say that.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say that the God, and the way I see God is a illogical being that doesn't conform to our understanding, and I'm not sure. I believe that whatever this God is, I'm not necessarily saying it is the God of the Bible, but I believe in that God because I believe that there must have been a necessary being, because there had to be something to cause existence in the first place, and that is where I get my justification for why I believe in God, because that's the explanation to the answer. That's the way I see it.
Yep. And I mean, hey, you're not going into denial. When I ask you a question, you just give me a direct answer. That's what's important to me.
Yeah, true. I also think another position that proves God's irrationality is, like you said, the problem of evil, where if you just add the three aspects of God, which is kind of funny because many people avoid this altogether. But if you add the three aspects of God of omnipotence, omniscience, and omnibenevolence, if you add those characteristics together, first of all, technically all those characteristics are illogical. But let's say, okay. Let's say you used the logical extensions of those characteristics. So when you say omniscience, you mean everything that is knowable, everything that can conceivably be knowable within the laws of logic. And then if you say omnipotence, meaning you can do everything within the laws of logic. And then you say benevolence, meaning he must be all good. You still have a contradiction there, and you can't escape that contradiction, because if God is all good, then, and he knows everything, and he has the power to make things that are evil stop, he must, by definition of benevolence, make things stop. And so it runs into the scenario of it can only be like two of those characteristics, not all three, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's often what ends up happening, is like with my questions, right? Like, why is God not saving the drowning children?
Yeah, and I think if you steelman this position to its highest relevance, I think you should use this, because this is the maximal steelman of this case, is why didn't God birth everyone into heaven, because where we could all have infinite pleasure forever? And it's like it avoids like I don't know. I think many people's answers would be that God conforms to the laws of logic, so God can't make it so that you both have infinite pleasure and have choice at the same time. And many people will say that God wants people to have choice, but I disagree completely. I think God can make whatever universe he wants because he has unlimited power. So he can easily make a universe where there is no suffering and we can all have choice. And I also believe he can do the illogical, so he can create a universe where a universe where you have free will and determinism exists simultaneously. So you can have an infinite pleasure non-existence of suffering, and everybody can choose, and whatever reason God made us for, maybe we're just entertainment, we don't have to suffer for his entertainment. And that's like the ultimate Steelman. It's like, it's just funny because like if I make that case, I think a lot of Christians would be like, well, no, like God made us because he wants us to get to him on our own intuition and our own knowledge, and he wants us to discover him for ourselves.
Yeah, he doesn't want to force us to love him. He wants us to love him by choice.
To choose to love him, yeah. And my answer to this would be, okay, God can literally create a world where we have infinite pleasure, and we can also do that thing. We can also find him on our own. It's like, what's the use of suffering? What does it add to anything at all? And
you get a logical... say that there's like a soul building from it. Like which again you can exactly. And if they use that excuse, you can use the same justification, which is like, okay, God can make it so that you can also do that because God can do everything. So it loops right back all around and says God can make a world of infinite pleasure. God can also do things that are contradictory, and he can make a world where we're building our soul and we're finding him on our own, and we also have infinite pleasure. I mean, one of the things that I like to bring up sometimes is like, why didn't God just like, for the Abrahamic religions, they often use the prophet, right? Moses, Jesus, Muhammad. Why not just leave him alive?
Yeah. Or better yet, just have us in heaven.
Yeah, but I mean, like, or you could even say, if before he created this human and gave it a soul or whatever, if he knew that person was going to go to hell, just skip that person and go on to the next one that's going to go to heaven. Then he has no need for hell, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why did God create hell? That's another question. It's like, another really interesting question is, and if you take your example from earlier, and this is so intriguing, the question of, so if you have a parent and they put their child in a room, right? And actually, I'm not sure I can build a good scenario. I'll just say it outright. How could God create, because he created us, if he exists, he creates us with the ability to not always choose him. And if God exists, and the world must be deterministic because he has precognition, he knows everything, how can he create, let's just say a person that doesn't believe in him is like unable to believe in him because he created that person to be that way. How can he let this person willingly walk down a path where he will never find God, and then at the end of his life, when he dies, he will suffer eternally? And he was determined to do this. He never had a chance.
Yeah.
It's like if you think about it like that, God is infinitely evil, right? Because if you take all the worst human beings that have ever existed, all the worst things that have ever existed in existence, and you combine all those things together, and then you add it by infinity, God is more evil than all of that.
Yeah, it's like, I jaywalked and now I'm gonna be put to the death penalty for it, kind of thing.
Exactly. It's like if you were a 2-year-old and I don't know, like you create a 2-year-old and then you put him on a slide and the slide goes to hell. It's like,
yeah.
It's like you didn't have a choice. You couldn't choose anything else. It happened deterministically. And that's also one of the great questions that God needs to answer for. And that's another reason I believe God is illogical, because that makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't make logical sense that he would allow such a thing to occur, that he would allow people to go to hell and suffer eternally for crimes that are not worth the punishment of eternity. Even if you take the worst person on earth that has ever existed, even they don't deserve hell, right? They deserve a long sentence, You could take, Hitler or Mao, and you could say they deserve, 1,000 years or 10,000 years of repentance. But their sentence would be finite. But in hell, it's not finite. It's eternal. This is an eternal punishment. And so...
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically the point.
Yeah. I know that it's one of the things about Islam that I was actually like, you know what, that's better. Because in Islam, hell isn't eternal except for shirk. But if you're just sinned, like say you killed 10,000 people, like Hitler or something like that, as long as he didn't commit shirk, which he was, so that's out of the question. But if he
Wait, so
wasn't,
what's shirk?
Shirk is depositing somebody else as equals to God. So like Christians are committing shirk because they're saying Jesus is God. Or Hindus are committing shirk because they say this other God created the universe when...
Okay, so it's like
Allah, right?
It's like idolatry or blasphemy, right? It's like saying you're God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
That's the only unforgivable sin in Islam.
Yeah, and it's funny because so as you can tell, I'm not like most Christians, but I've definitely had these questions for a while, and I've written them down and challenged myself, and I've always wanted to ask these questions to like people who deal with apologetics and like pastors and stuff like that. I've never had the opportunity, but I definitely want to ask these questions to them and see what their answer is. I don't believe their answer would be mine, which is God is illogical. I think they would try to make another answer. I think it would be a lot of coping. But
Yep.
I'd just be interested to see if they do have any answers to these questions. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I am saying I've exhausted, I think, most paths.
Have you been? You know who Cameron Bertuzzi from Capturing Christianity is?
No, who's that?
Excellent. Well, he's a Christian apologist, and he recently started doing call-ins. And well, he's seen a lot of the questions that I ask in my comments. And when Frank Turek was on his show to answer some questions from people, they didn't let me in. They would.
Damn.
Yeah. And
oh wait, we gotta organize one of these things. I should do a call-in.
Yeah, for sure. But also, like, because you're not known by him, you might actually get on the show, and you might be able to ask some of these questions to him or whoever he's got on the show that would be an apologist.
That's a good point. That's very interesting. Yeah. I think, yeah, I'd like to do that. I need to, like, know more content creators that, like, interact with the community. Like, I've been trying to, like, get on platforms and, like, start talking with people. The thing is, well, I started a YouTube channel because I kind of want to get into the sphere because, well, I'm interested in learning truth, and I'm also interested in changing people's minds to find truth. And the reason is because I want, irrational as it is, I want a life of pleasure where where I have a community of people who also seek truth and also want to know the answers and respect people's autonomy. And I want to build that community, and I want to change people's minds towards truth, because if there is a purpose for life, it's definitely, it has something to do with finding truth, I think.